You've been saving $500 a month for 3 years. 3 years of packing sad lunches, skipping happy hours, pretending you don't want the vacation everyone else is taking, and the number staring back at you, $19,000. $19,000. You could almost buy a used Honda Civic. Congratulations. You're basically a financial genius. Meanwhile, your coworker, the one who started investing a decade ago, just casually dropped in Slack that his portfolio went up $47,000 last quarter. He didn't contribute a single penny. He was literally on vacation in Portugal, drinking wine and eating cheese, while his money made more in 3 months than you've scraped together in 3 years. You want to throw your laptop through the window. Here is the thing. Nobody tells you about building wealth. The beginning doesn't feel like building anything. It feels like stuffing cash into a mattress that someone's actively deflating while you sleep. You're doing everything right. Maxing your Roth IRA, buying boring index funds, eating grocery store sushi instead of restaurant sushi, and your net worth is crawling forward like a drunk snail on sedatives. My name is Pa, and I'm going to tell you something that every financial guru conveniently forgets to mention when they're selling you their path to millions bullshit. What you're experiencing right now, it is not failure, it is physics. And the physics, they're designed to make you quit. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're pushing a boulder up a mountain, not some cute little rock you could kick around. I'm talking about a 2-ton slab of granite that barely moves when you throw your entire body weight against it. Your legs are shaking, you're drenched in sweat, you've been pushing for an hour, and you look back to see how far you've come. 12 feet. You moved 12 feet. This is you from zero to your first $100,000. It is supposed to feel impossible. It is supposed to make you want to give up. Because right now in this phase, you are doing 100% of the work. Your money is just sitting there judging you, contributing basically nothing. Let's do the math, because the math is brutal and nobody wants to say it out loud. You have $5,000 invested. The market has a great year, 10% returns, champagne popping, bulls running through Wall Street. Your share of that celebration, $500. That is dinner, maybe dinner and a movie if you're not in Manhattan. That is not life-changing. That is not my money is working for me. That is your money taking a nap while you grind yourself into dust. Here is the cruel reality. In the first 5 to 7 years of investing, almost all of your account growth comes from you manually shoveling money into the machine. The compound interest everyone romanticizes, it is happening. It is technically there, but it is happening on such a pathetically small base that it is basically invisible. You save $6,000 this year. The market generously gifts you $400, and your brain correctly registers, I did all the work. You're right. You did. This is exactly the phase where people quit. They watch their friend lease a BMW. They see their cousin buy a boat. They look at their brokerage account that says $23,000 after years of sacrifice. And they think, what is the goddamn point? So they cash out, they buy the thing, they feel good for about 6 months. And then they're right back at zero, except now they're 6 years older with nothing to show for it. The point, and I need you to hear this, is that you're building the foundation for a machine that will eventually run without you. But foundations are underground. Nobody sees them. Nobody congratulates you for pouring concrete. Nobody throws a parade when you hit your first $50,000. The average person investing consistently takes 7 to 8 years to hit that first $100,000. 7 to 8 years. That is 2 presidential terms. That is long enough to forget why you even started. That is long enough to convince yourself this whole thing is a scam. But that 100 grand, that is the activation point. And here is where the physics finally stops screwing you. Once you cross $100,000, something shifts, not in the world, in the equation. Suddenly, a 10% year doesn't give you $500. It gives you $10,000. That is a used car appearing in your account because the market had a good quarter. That is real money. That is money you can feel. Your contributions still matter, obviously, but now they're being amplified by something you're not directly controlling. Your money has finally woken up from its nap and started pulling its weight. The second $100,000, the climb from $100 K to $200 K typically takes about 5 years. Not 8-5. Same contributions from you, but the math has switched sides. The boulder is visibly rolling faster. You're still pushing, but you're no longer the only engine. By the time you are sitting on $400,000 or $500,000. If you catch a strong market year, your account might jump $60,000 to $80,000 in 12 months. You didn't save $80,000. You probably saved $15,000. The market did the rest while you were asleep. Let me say that again, because this is the part that should make your brain explode. The market, this abstract collection of businesses you own tiny pieces of, earned more for you in 1 year than you could save from your actual job. That is the crossover point. That is when your financial future is no longer chained to your ability to show up and trade hours for dollars. And this is where most people do something catastrophically stupid. You are 5 years in. You got $60,000 saved. You are exhausted. You've been driving the same boring car, wearing the same boring clothes, saying no to every trip and every dinner and every experience that costs money. And you see that new car or that nicer apartment or that vacation everyone's posting about, and you think, I deserve this. I've been sacrificing for years. I've earned it. So you pull $20,000 out. You just reset the snowball. You are back at $40,000, and I know that doesn't sound catastrophic. It is only 20 grand. I'll build it back. But you are not just losing $20,000. You're losing all the compound growth that money would have generated over the next 20 years. At 7% annual returns, that $20,000 would have become $77,000 in 20 years. You didn't spend 20 grand. You spent 77 grand. You deleted money that didn't exist yet, but absolutely would have. The only rule during the push phase is this: don't stop pushing. You don't need to be smart. You don't need to pick stocks. You don't need to time the market or find some secret strategy that nobody else knows about. You just need to be consistent and patient enough to survive the boring part. The math doesn't give a damn about your feelings. It will work if you let it. It will absolutely destroy you if you don't. Now, let's talk about what happens after you cross the threshold. Once you are past $500,000 or $600,000, the game fundamentally changes. You stop checking your account every week because, frankly, the swings are so massive they'll either make you feel like a genius or give you a heart attack. A bad month might see your portfolio drop $30,000. A good month might add $50,000. These aren't numbers you saved. These are numbers the market is just throwing around, and you're along for the ride. Here is where it gets psychologically weird. When your net worth starts jumping around by more than your annual salary, your relationship with money gets distorted. You'll have this surreal moment where you lose what used to be 6 months of salary in a market dip, and you'll just shrug and make a sandwich because you've learned that it is not real until you sell. Your coworker will panic about their $2,000 loss. You nod sympathetically while thinking about the $40,000 your account dropped last Tuesday. You don't mention it because it sounds like a humble brag, but it is not bragging. It is just geometry. At $700,000, if the market gives you an average 8% year, that is $56,000 in growth. You probably contributed $18,000 from your paycheck. Your money made 3 times what you could save. You worked all year, showed up, did your job, and your portfolio sitting in a corner doing absolutely nothing outturned you by a factor of 3. That is not a flex. That is math at scale. The curve you've been climbing finally bent in your favor. So, when do you actually feel rich? The answer is never, because the goalpost moves. But there is a specific moment when you feel untouchable. And it is not when you hit $1 million. It is when you realize your portfolio's bad year is still better than your good year at work. When the market tanks 15% and you lose $120,000 on paper, but your account still grew $30,000 because you kept contributing. You took a catastrophic hit by normal standards and still ended up ahead. That is when you stop flinching. But here is the irony that kills people at this stage. You spend a decade clawing your way to $600,000, living below your means, driving the same car, saying no to vacations. Then you hit the number and your brain says, I made it, time to enjoy life. So you buy the dream house, you finance the car you've wanted since college. You book the trip to Europe, and suddenly your lifestyle costs have jumped 40%. You went from saving $20,000 a year to saving $5,000 because you are finally living like someone who has money, except you just kneecapped the exponential phase. You were right at the point where the Boulder was about to roll downhill on its own, and you decided to sit on it. The next $300,000 would have taken 4 years. Now, it is going to take 9 because you're barely feeding the machine. You didn't ruin your life, but you traded velocity for comfort, and maybe that is worth it. I'm not here to judge, but understand the trade you're making. Eyes open, the smarter play. And I know this sounds masochistic, is to keep living like you're broke for 3 more years. Just 3. You are at $700,000. If you keep contributing $20,000 a year and the market cooperates, you'll hit $1 million in under 4 years. And once you're at $1 million, the math becomes obscene. A 10% year is $100,000. You could stop contributing entirely, let it sit for 20 years, and retire with over $6 million, assuming 7% growth. But if you inflate your lifestyle now, you're extending the timeline by half a decade, maybe more. There is also a psychological trap here that nobody talks about. Once your net worth starts hitting 7 figures, you begin to feel like you should be doing something fancy with it. You see people talking about real estate, angel investing, crypto, starting a side business, and you think, I have $1 million, I should be leveraging this. So you pull $200,000 out to buy a rental property, because that is what rich people do, right? Except now you're a landlord. You are dealing with tenants, repairs, property taxes, 3 a.m. phone calls about broken pipes. And if you're unlucky, evictions. You traded a simple automated compounding machine for a second job that pays maybe 5%. If you are lucky, you turned your passive snowball into active work. Sometimes that is the right move. Most of the time, it is self-sabotage dressed up as ambition. The boring truth is that the best thing you can do with a 7-figure portfolio is absolutely nothing. Let it compound, don't get clever, don't try to optimize. The S&P 500 has beaten most hedge funds, most landlords, and most entrepreneurs over any 20-year period. You already won the game, don't blow it trying to win harder. Now here is the final boss. The thing nobody warns you about. You are at $1.5 million, you are 50 years old. You've been at this for 25 years. The question isn't, can I retire anymore? The math says you're free. A 4% withdrawal rate gives you $60,000 a year, inflation adjusted forever. If you can live on that, you're done. You never have to work another day. But most people don't pull the trigger. They keep working because they're terrified the market will crash the day after they quit, or because they've tied their identity to their job, or because they don't actually know what they'd do with themselves. The portfolio is no longer the constraint. Psychology is. And that is a problem no amount of compounding can solve. Let me be uncomfortably honest about something. The hardest part of building wealth isn't the math. It is not picking the right funds or finding some secret strategy. The hardest part is sitting on a pile of money that could literally change your life right now and choosing not to touch it. At $1.5 million, you have options that would have seemed like science fiction when you started. You could buy a lake house, quit your job, and travel for 2 years. Write a check that eliminates your kids' student loans. All of these are mathematically possible, and every single one would feel incredible for about 6 months. Then you wake up at 52, back at work because you have to be watching your former snowball limp along at $900,000, and you realize you traded permanent freedom for temporary relief. That is the test nobody warns you about. If you withdraw $100,000 from a $1.5 million portfolio for something big, something meaningful, you are not just losing $100,000. Over 20 years at 7%, that 100 grand would have become $387,000. You didn't spend 100 grand, you spent nearly 400 grand. And here is what actually happens once you break the seal. You do it again. Maybe not immediately, but eventually, because your brain has recategorized the money from untouchable investment to available resource. That is how people with $2 million end up back at $800,000, wondering what the hell happened. But discipline without vision is just masochism. If you keep contributing through your 50s, your portfolio hits $2 million at 55, then $2.5 million at 58. By 60, you are looking at $3 million. At this level, a 4% withdrawal gives you $120,000 a year. That is not scraping by. That is living comfortably, traveling, helping your kids, and still leaving a 7-figure inheritance. You didn't just retire, you built a machine that generates wealth while you sleep. A machine that will outlive you. But here is the elephant in the room. If you've spent 30 years defining yourself by your career, by your productivity, by your title, the idea of walking away feels like erasing yourself. You're not retiring from a job. You're retiring from being useful, from being important, from being you. That is why people with $3 million still show up to work every Monday. They're not there for the paycheck. They're there because they don't know who they are without it. Your portfolio can't fix that. You can have $10 million and still feel empty if you then never figured out what you actually want your life to be about. That is the final boss of financial independence. Not the math, not the market. The existential question of what you do with your time when nobody's paying you to do anything. So if you are anywhere on this journey, whether you are at $50,000 or $1.5 million, the strategy is identical. Automate everything. Contribute consistently. Ignore the noise. don't touch the snowball. And while you're grinding through the push phase, start building a life outside of work that you'd actually want to live full time. Because the portfolio will get there, the math is relentless. But if you arrive at financial independence and realize you have no hobbies, no relationships, and no purpose, you didn't win. You just traded one prison for another. Nobody's gonna throw you a parade when you hit six figures. There is no certificate, no trophy, no moment where the universe acknowledges you did something. Most people never will. You'll log into your brokerage account one random Tuesday, see the number, and probably feel nothing. But that is exactly the point. The activation isn't supposed to feel like winning the lottery. It is supposed to feel inevitable because you built a system that doesn't require motivation or inspiration. You built something that works whether you're paying attention or not. The people who make it to real wealth, the kind that lasts, they're not obsessed with their net worth. They got so focused on building a life they didn't want to escape from that the portfolio just happened in the background. The snowball rolled, they barely noticed. So if you're still in the push phase, watching your account move like continental drift, don't stop. You're not behind. You're exactly where the math says you should be. And if you're past the activation point, sitting on $500,000 or more, don't get stupid now. The finish line isn't a number. It is the moment you realize you don't need to keep score anymore because you already built something that outlives the game.